bit of music here. We're going to talk about Our Lady of Czestochowa a little bit and the icon. As we began to say back there, this is one or the oldest of Marian images or icons. It is believed to be painted by St. Luke himself on the table that the Holy Family used as their table in their home. So it is one of the great treasures of the church. It changed hands multiple times, but it came to Poland in 1382 when the Prince of Russia was transporting the icon across Poland. And when they got to Czestochowa, the horses refused to go any further. They stopped and they wouldn't move. So the prince interpreted that as a sign that the icon wanted to remain here in Poland. So it has been in Poland for over 600 years now. And it has served as a symbol of unity of Poland, and because many times, as we're going to talk about in just a minute, Our Lady has defended the country of Poland, and they call Our Lady of Czestochowa the Queen of Poland. And so she is their queen, who they go to. It is one of the most visited Marian shrines in all the world. And John Paul II grew up going to visit the shrine of Our Lady of Czestochowa regularly and all the time. When he came back here as Holy Father for his first trip back to Poland after being elected to the papacy in 1979, he said he came here and he gave an address from actually this very field. The statue that Mother was pointing to of John Paul represents is where he spoke from. So he spoke from and said the Mass right here in this field, up that altar up there, which I also believe is where Pope Francis is going to come and address the people of Poland. When he comes next week, he's going to be coming here as well.
The symbols of faith and the generations that have been bringing gifts to Our Lady of Czestochowa for over 6 centuries.
When we were praying in front of Our Lady and we had that miraculous grace of being in front of her, I sensed personally that she had a very simple message for us. And she just said, I hear their anguished cries. Here I listen to them, and here they should listen to me. And I think that that's kind of a summary also of the history of Poland and the history of her maternity over this country and over each one of us. Here I hear their anguished cries. Here I listen to them, and they should listen to me. That's John Paul speaking to us.
Jak na przykład wybór drogi życiowej czy powołania, wiązać z tym miejscem, z tym sanktuarium, przyzwyczaili się ze wszystkim przychodzić na jasną górę, aby mówić o wszystkim swojej matce.
These words still find their confirmation in the life of the sanctuary. Pilgrims enter the holiness of this place through the mystery of God's.
Here, Mother's quote at the beginning of this section, I think also summarizes this. It says this:
Very briefly and specifically.
Her womb is the most fruitful place for the human heart and the most efficacious school to learn to contemplate the mysteries of God and humanity. And I think there's a great sense of being in the womb of Our Lady here. And there's a great sense of her maternity over us in this place and over Poland.
It often happens that people, sometimes after many years, get reconciled to God.
The Poles, as we've been talking about, the Polish people were oppressed and have been oppressed and crushed by so many throughout all these years. And it's precisely their love for Our Lady, and that the fact that they go to her here, that she defends them. In all of their anguish throughout these years, the Poles have always gone precisely here to ask for Our Lady's intercession. And that takes us back to that first kind of message of Our Lady. I hear her anguished cries. And it is precisely here that she hears and has continued to hear and has heard over the years all of the anguished cries of her Polish people. I don't know, I'm Polish, and when I was growing up in Michigan, there was always, people made Polish jokes a lot. I don't know if you've ever heard them, and so I kind of grew up thinking like it was a mockery. It wasn't a good thing, and I kind of always grew up thinking that to be Polish was something to be ashamed of. I remember hearing about how when the Germans came in to invade Poland in World War II, the Poles came at them with their horses, like their cavalry, and they fought the German tanks with their cavalry, and they were beat within a matter of days. And everyone always kind of, you could say, mocked Poland for their weakness and their smallness and the fact that they couldn't defend themselves, etc. And it was kind of it was not always a good thing to be seen as Polish. But I think in that we see again that the Lord always defends his weak. And in the midst of that, always the Poles are often, you could say, weak in a human, earthly way. Does that make sense? Like they don't have a lot of defense, they don't have a lot of power in the world. But they're smart. They're not dumb. Because they know who their true queen is. And I was thinking, while we were praying in front of Our Lady, how when the Israelites demanded a king from the Lord, Samuel was upset. He said, why are they doing this? And the Lord was he was upset because he said, I'm supposed to be their king. But then he basically gave in to their cries to have an earthly king. And I think the Polish people are kind of the opposite. I think maybe that they've always understood that Our Lady is their queen. She is their queen. And they've always understood that that's where the true power lies, is precisely in their queenship. Despite the fact that they may be weak and oppressed in an earthly sense, they are defended by the Queen of Heaven and Earth. And one of the most famous examples of that defense is the miracle on the Vistula. We were in Warsaw, and we didn't get a chance to go to the Vistula River, but in 1920, the Russian army, remember, Poland became a nation again for the first time in 1918. They rose out of the ashes of World War I. So
3 months after Fatima.
3 months after Fatima. So 3 months after Fatima, they become a nation again after 123 years. And then 2 years later, the Russian Soviet massive army is coming to invade Europe, and they're going to come through Poland. And they basically thought they would roll over Poland very quickly and very easily, because Poland was barely a nation. They had very little defense, very little army, and very little means of defending themselves. So they were just going to go right through Poland into the rest of Europe. But Poland, being smart, they knew who has the real power. So the whole nation began to pray to Our Lady of Czestochowa, and they came here and they began praying for her miraculous intervention. And long story short, that's exactly what happened. It said that Our Lady appeared to the Russian army, actually, over the Vistula. They saw her, and basically they were turned back and defeated for really no good earthly reason. They had a massive army, much greater than Poland, and Poland was able to resist them and defeat them, and it was a crushing blow to the Russian army, and for that reason they went back into Russia, and they never actually came back into Europe again. And so really, again, not for the first time, Poland saved Europe by going to the real queen, but not by any of their earthly power. And so I think oftentimes for us, we have a temptation to want to fight the battle. First, we have to wake up and realize there is a battle, actually. So that's the first thing. Sometimes we don't even realize there is a battle, and we're sitting in the midst of the war, and we don't know who the enemy is, and we don't know who the good guy is, and we don't even realize there's one going on, and we're indifferent to it. So that's the first thing we have to overcome. But then once we realize there's a battle, we're in a battle, and that good must triumph over that evil, we sometimes have the temptation to try to battle that evil with our own power, our own talents, our own arguments, etc., 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 instead of realizing that the real power comes not from us, but really from our Lord and His Mother, who He gives all that power to. And I think that's one of the great lessons that Our Lady of Czestochowa teaches us today. When we go to her as our mother with our anguished cries, and we take her as our queen, she rises up to defend us. And that's where the true power of heaven and earth lies. So that is a question for us, is one, Our Lady is calling us here to go to her with our anguish cries, where she promises to listen to us. And that is what John Paul said when he came here in 1979. He said that this is a place of listening, where Our Lady listens to us. She hears all the sufferings of our hearts. And that's why he consecrated Poland, he reconsecrated Poland to her. And he explained, he said, when we talk about consecration, he often says it's called slavery. But he says it's not the slavery that we think of, but it's a servitude in which because if we trust her as our mother, that we place ourselves under her protection. And that's precisely what we do in Marian consecration. We're saying, you are my mother, you are my queen, and I place myself under you because I trust you as my mother. I trust that you hear my anguish cries. I trust that you are listening to every need of my heart and that you are hearing me. But then the other part of what Our Lady was trying to tell us here is that we also should come to listen to her. And when John Paul came here in 1979, that's what he said. He said that we also, because she's our mother, I'm going to quote him, that we must come here and we must listen to this shrine. And we must listen to the heart of its mother and queen. And if her heart beats with a tone of disquiet, if it echoes with solicitude and the cry of conversion, and the call to strengthen our consciousness, he says this invitation must be accepted, because it is an invitation springing from eternal love. And so he also here says that Our Lady listens to us, but we also should come here to listen to her, because she's our mother. And so she has things to say to us, whether it's words of consolation, whether it's a call to conversion, whether it's what John Paul said, the strengthening of our consciousness. But we also come here to listen to her as our mother.
Another thing, when John Paul came back as a pope for the first time to Poland, he stood in front of the image of Our Lady and he said 3 phrases that I think are very revealing of his relationship with Our Lady of Czestochowa. He said, Mother, I remember, I am attentive to your voice, and I am always with you. And when do you say to a person, I remember? It's when you have a memory with that person. So what he was saying is, I'm out of Poland, and now I am the Holy Father. I am the universal shepherd of the church. But whatever happened to you, to me, here in this place, I will always remember and guide all my decisions. And I will always be attentive to your voice. It's so powerful to hear the successor of Peter and St. John Paul the Great to say that everything he did, it was as a fruit of his attention to Our Lady. That he was always attentive to the directions of the Blessed Mother. And then he said, and I am with you. I've always been with you. And I will continue to be with you at the foot of the cross. And so those 3 phrases, I think, are very powerful, and maybe we should say it to Our Lady through Mass. Blessed Mother, I will always remember everything you have done for me, every experience I have had with you, every experience of your maternity. No matter what happens in life, no matter how old I get, I will always remember. I will always be attentive to your voice, and I will always be with you. So it is a covenant of love that John Paul made here, and it's a covenant of love that we are invited to do today. 3 always. In a time in history where always is almost disappearing, we have to be people of forever and always. I will always remember, I will always be with you, and I will always be attentive to your voice. This is a place, as Sister Sara was saying, that reminds us that the Queen of heaven and earth is our mother. And this country has experienced the power of her queenship in the greatest battles. And I just remember one story that's the last one I'm going to say before you go. And it is that, remember that communism, they wanted to build cities without God, nations without God. So everything that is spoke of God, they wanted to destroy it. All the different systems that have taken over and oppressed Poland, they wanted to destroy the sanctuary, and they never could. And even if you were able to see, a lady has a wound in her face, isn't it? But they tried to repair many times that wound. That wound was made by some extremist Muslims that came and wanted to destroy the image, and they stabbed a lady's face. And so after they've been trying to fix the face, and a lady does not allow herself to be fixed. And that is the testimony of all the people that have tried to fix her. She doesn't allow herself to be fixed. She wants to remind us that sin has consequences, and that sin wounds her heart and wounds our hearts and wounds our souls and wounds our faith, and whatever type of sin it is, it wounds that area of our life. So Our Lady, when we go to Mass, see her wound in her face, and remember that she's trying to say that sin has consequences, and the only way to erase that sin is going to confession, to erase it. And the only way to heal it after confession is living as a life of sacrament, a sacramental life. But what I was going to say is that it's a tradition here that on the feast of Our Lady Czestochowa, they process the image all over. Actually, they begin a month before processing all over Poland. And there was one of the years when John Paul was already the Archbishop of Krakow, that the communist government said the icon cannot get out. We do not allow the procession of Our Lady. And as you know, Karol Wojtyła was very creative and very determined. And he said, "You don't want a lady to process?" I said, "No, and we don't want you to say why she's not processing." I said, "Okay, I will do so." And so what did he do? He did a procession. The same, ¿cómo se dice? Carroza. Like the same procession cart that they always use, with the same flowers and everything, with the same frame where they put a lady, but it was empty. And so he was walking before the image that wasn't there. So what he was telling the people, they may not allow us to have the image of a lady, but the image of a lady is in our hearts. So we continue to do the procession with an empty frame. And so that is the type of courage of John Paul II, which is the type of courage of the Polish people.